Hi, my name is Yula Wong, and I'm one of the PIs for GEAR 2.0 Advancing Dementia Care. From our consensus conference that was held in September, I am now presenting to you in November the key research priority areas for the detection group. As a quick point, as we know, persons who have dementia use the emergency department actually at a greater rate than those who don't have dementia. But what we also recognize is we often don't recognize patients who have dementia and they're poorly identified. So the dementia detection is critical in the sense that it could potentially allow us to better identify these individuals and change the trajectories of their progression with cognitive decline by improving their care coordination and hopefully patient safety. So the question from this group was really centered around, is there a role for dementia detection in the ED? I want to really frame up that detection here is by the group. Consensus was focused on screening. So the role to screen for dementia and not necessarily diagnose dementia. And we refer to cognitive impairment and dementia interchangeably, but dementia is really more of a diagnostic term. And then finally, we refer here to cognitive impairment to focus exclusively on dementia, so excluding delirium. Some key points from our discussion centered around the fact that there's very little focused on demographic data in previous studies and differences there with these patients. And by not accounting for diversity, we can actually worsen health disparities when it comes to screening. The screening tools should account for differences in sensitivity and specificity. And the purpose of the screening is really to help facilitate what next steps are in clinical care. So is there referral for patients who have suspected dementia? The importance of follow-up and post-discharge resources being offered to these individuals. The purpose of screening is not for population screening. It's very important to rely and turn to caregivers and care partners when available to help with detection of impairment. And finally, there may be some significant overlap with cognitive impairment and mental health screening. And it is important to actively communicate cognitive assessment results. So sharing these results rather than withholding them could actually improve the care and is critical for key next steps and reduce the risk of stigmatizing. So for these reasons, our first research priority voted by consensus from the task force group was, what is the best approach in the ED to screen for cognitive impairment? The approach includes population definitions, using data sources, screening test effectivenesses, and efficacy and referral. The second important priority was, what are the most accurate and feasible tools and data to identify cognitive impairment in the absence of delirium or known dementia? The third priority was, what is the value and potential unintended consequences of screening for cognitive impairment in the ED? The fourth priority was, how can EDs feasibly take into account culture, language, the ED environment, and the communities of the population served when screening cognitive impairment in the ED? For example, does English as a second language impact screening of dementia? And then finally, what information is needed to differentiate delirium versus undiagnosed cognitive impairment versus known dementia versus mental health conditions in this population? And so these are the research priorities that GEAR 2.0 pilots should focus on if considering detection of cognitive impairment in the emergency department. Thank you.